All right, I have 1:01 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you for joining us today for our LPF webinar titled Integration Strategies for LP/AP, a panel discussion sponsored by Telaid. We would like to thank Telaid for being a valued LPF partner and for sponsoring today's webinar. Telaid has a consistent track record of delivering even the most complex technology projects on time and on budget. For 40 years, technology integrator Telaid has served its clients by deploying excellence and exceeding expectations. Flexible and resourceful, Telaid is a single provider of rapid deployments, cradle-to-grave technology solutions, wireless and physical security. My name is Matt Schreiner, and I'm the Senior Director of Operations for the Loss Prevention Foundation, and I will be your host today. Before we get to the session, we do want to talk about a couple logistics items. First and foremost, the session is being recorded. Everyone is muted, and we do ask that you leverage the Q&A box for any questions that will go directly to our panelists, and we will hold those questions until the end of the discussion to ensure we're able to get through the material that has been prepared for you today. Now I have the pleasure of introducing my friend and distinguished moderator, Mike Corcuba, LP veteran and Vice President of Sales and Leader of Physical Security with Telaid. Good afternoon, Mike.
Thanks, Matt. I want to welcome everybody to today's panel on integration strategies for loss prevention and asset protection. My name is Mike Corcuba. As Matt shared, I'm the VP of Sales at Telaid. I'll be the moderator today. We've brought together a team of knowledgeable panelists who represent different stakeholders in the ecosystem that serve our loss prevention and asset protection partners. And I think you're really going to benefit from the expertise that they bring to the table. As I introduce each of you today, could you please speak briefly about your role and insight that you bring to the panel today? Andy, let me start with you.
Sure. Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me part of this panel. So my name is Andy Hewells, and I lead artificial intelligence in North America for Lenovo. My role is really to help loss prevention leaders like yourself understand how you can leverage artificial intelligence to help make smarter decisions, increase safety, operational efficiency, and enhance overall customer experience. And I primarily focus on the retail sector.
Great, thanks. Alex, let me jump over to you.
Yes, thank you, Mike. Thank you, Matt, as well. Appreciate it. Excited to be here today. Alex Siskos with Everseen. In my current role, I lead market analysis and corporate strategy for Everseen, and I'm helping the company across its growth in the retail sector, as well as expansion in new market segments. What I'm hoping to bring today to the panel is the blend of, some of my background in retail strategy and analytics from places like Accenture, Walgreens, Nielsen, is brought together and coupled with my passion for this village of experts that we have here on how we can be better together for our mutual customers.
Great, thanks, Alex. And Jordan, we'll bring it over to you. You have a kind of a unique perspective because you made that jump from practitioner to partner.
Yes, sir. Well, glad to be here, Mike, and as well as Alex and Andy. Jordan Rivshin, I'm the head of business development with Hanwha Techwin America. The artist formerly known as Samsung, as many know us by. Recovering LP executive myself, like Mike, transition over to what is the so-called dark side of the industry about 4.5 years ago. And my role with our organization and the team's role is really to just help translate what our retailers and our quick service restaurant and end user customers need from a solution, and bring that to life through our product, our solutions, and the ecosystem that we support, just like you all.
Great. Appreciate you all being here and in partnership with Telaid. So today we're going to really try to guide the conversation to some learning. And I think learning's at the core of what we deliver here at the LP Foundation. Challenging ourselves to take on new technology, new initiatives, and new technologies. With those technologies, we're looking to see what key technologies are driving a shift from reactive to predictive within the loss prevention space. And we're looking at what technology advancements have taken place over the last 10 to 20 years and where we think they're going to go in the next 24 to 36 months, because we really feel that those advancements in the next 24 to 36 months are going to eclipse everything that's happened in the last 10 years. What's coming and how is it going to revolutionize loss prevention? And then second thing we're going to look at is selling change. Currently, the system integration is used to be a device or system driven deployment. And now we're looking at technologies today that are much more complex and sophisticated. The old approach seemed to be system integration, and now it's more of a unification process that are driving stakeholders from to buy differently. And that's why we think selling change is at the heart of this. And then finally, we're going to explore some really exciting disruptive use cases that are emerging in loss prevention and asset protection. So in setting that stage, we know that loss prevention and asset protection professionals are really changing the way they operate within their businesses. They're really becoming leaders in the business because of what technology they are adopting and driving into the business. And I think that's where we'll really start. To do that, I'm going to ask Jordan, given your experience as a loss prevention professional, can you paint us a picture of what's going on in AP today and how it's changing?
Yeah, I sure can, Mike. So I think it's escalated over the past several years, and is continuing to kind of evolve on a daily basis. But you know, where in the past, maybe you and I back in our history, we're chasing that shrink dollar. You're not going to catch your way to low shrink anymore. And I think to me, there's been a quick pivot between that shrink focus, which obviously is part and parcel to what the role of AP or LP does, but more of a fundamental shift to safety and the livelihood of our employees, our staff members, and our paying patrons and customers. So I see a large shift from that you know, shoot 'em up cowboy old mentality of loss prevention to how do we secure our people, our property, and our assets. Ultimately, that helps with profitability, but safety is fundamental. And how retailers can leverage technology to help complement their organizations, their people, not replace those people, but help as a force multiplier is, I think, something that all of us collectively see happening within the industry. And I think collectively, from a technology perspective, how can we educate the asset protection professionals of today of what that roadmap looks like? And you mentioned it to begin with, Mike. I think what's coming now and what's available today is light years beyond what we were all pitched and told was possible in the past, with way more accuracy and way more reliability. And I think if you are sitting in that chair today as a decision maker, an influencer of what technology can be adopted, I would challenge you to really ask great questions of either the folks on this panel or the people that support you from a technology perspective to make sure that you're building a roadmap that's sustainable long-term.
Thanks, Jordan. I think if I was to summarize something that you just said there, you said ask great questions. And I think asking great questions is going to define if you get what you asked for or get what you want. And I think that's a key driver in the buying behavior that's starting to evolve within the loss prevention community.
100%. 100%.
Andy, I'm going to turn over to you because I think you're going to have a perspective that's going to shed some light on those emergent technologies and where Lenovo is really starting to fit into that ecosystem much more at the front of the line than it used to.
Yeah, Jordan hit on something that's so important, and that's, you know, that loss prevention now is safety, right? The loss of our employees and customers is paramount. So what we do at Lenovo is to find those AI technologies that protect customers, whether they're in the parking lot, in your store, in the back of the house, and help you understand how to easily deploy those. So let me just touch on what maybe 5 or 6 of those would be. One is one that you're probably very familiar with, and that's self-checkout. Once computer vision with Jordan's cameras was integrated with AI into our servers, that's what enabled, this computer vision has really enabled a lot of analytics and being able to detect not just shrinkage, but all kinds of things, people lying on the floor, you know, all kinds of safety issues. You know, if someone's hands are up, that's obviously a sign that it's not a normal shopping behavior, right? So we can see all of these things. Additional, after self-checkout, many of you already have self-checkout. And the next what's coming is autonomous checkout, right? With this labor shortage, we're seeing that people just want to get in and out of the stores. They have a need for speed, and they're used to a frictionless experience. So they really, are craving this autonomous, where they simply, flash their phone with their card and take whatever they need and leave, and the receipt comes to them a couple minutes later. And email. So Lenovo can help with Telaid and Hanwha to integrate that type of technology. We're also seeing a lot more store analytics, right? Heat mapping the stores, or, which sections of the stores are the most profitable? How long do people stand and look at certain products versus other products? And then which ones do they ultimately buy? Those type of analytics are actually the table stakes right now, because a lot of people sell their shelf space, right? So if you know exactly who's looking at those products on the shelf, you can sell that for more. We're also seeing queue management, right? If people don't want to wait in line, maybe we should figure out what are the busiest times in your stores, right? And figure out, if there's a ton of people at like lunchtime versus 4 p.m., there's almost no one, you can adjust your staffing accordingly. And then back onto safety, we have all kinds of tools with artificial intelligence to detect not only odd, body placements, like whether they're on the floor or so forth, but also we can detect things like groups coming in at one time, which, might be gang related, theft. We can detect sounds that are not appropriate for a retail environment, and alert authorities. So there's just so much you can do with AI right now to protect not only your assets, but your customers and your employees.
Thanks, Andy. And Alex, I'll turn over to you, because I think you have some perspective on a number of those topics that Andy just brought up, and how the data that's coming from that becomes usable.
Absolutely, Mike. Both Jordan and Andy hit on the fact that we're drowning in use cases, right? We're, to some extent, a use case driven ecosystem right now, and that's got good and bad in it, right? The good is we're learning the art of the possible, right? The bad is we got a lot of bespoke solutions. So I think the answer is, what is the adjacent possible, right, from all of this stuff, right? And so there's a beauty about understanding that business question that starts it all, right? I think we're all kind of going through this Jerry Maguire moment, which is follow the money. And if you kind of look at the way that Andy went through the store, we started from something at self-checkout that basically showed, hey, if we can stop what's leaving the store, not only do you basically stop the shrink that's happening, if you do so without changing the customer experience, you're actually prepping the customer for what's coming next in the evolution of checkout. And if you do those two things right, your inventory on hand is, for all intents and purposes, kind of in check, and you don't go looking for that item that's, basically left. But to your point, this data is exploding, right? And this data is exploding in such a fashion where you have to kind of take a step back and say, based on what I learned from the SCO, how can I inform autonomous stores? When I move into the aisle, it's an interesting comment that Jordan made, right? Is it a shift from, into safety, or is it an actual addition now, right? So do I now find myself in the aisle blending on-shelf availability with organized retail crime? Can I actually squeeze out of two different use cases, but using the same hardware, and try to figure out how that kind of happens, right? And Andy made a good point on visibility, right? If you think about all these bespoke solutions as flashlights, the people you have in your panel today are working very hard to turn these flashlights into one floodlight, right? That's how you get informed from stem to stern, front of store, middle, back, in and around, and everything in between, right? And we can basically turn the lights on.
Thanks, Alex. I think what we'll do is we'll take a break from the discussion and get the poll question out to the audience here today. So what we wanted to do was ask, which one of the following technologies do each of you that are in the audience today see as having the biggest impact on your ability to compact shrink? Is it AI? Is it computer vision? Is it unified physical security systems, case management tools, or item level protection? And so we'll take a minute here and let the audience chime in, and then we'll kind of review that those responses. So thanks for everybody for participating in the poll. So I don't know if I'm surprised or not, but it looks like everybody's kind of going toward unified physical security system. So I'll open that to the panel and see if there's any comments on that. Jordan?
Yeah, I don't think I'm surprised either. I think, you know, ultimately the retailers that are out there today running sizable organizations need a single platform, which is why it's so essential for all of us, even though we sell different things and have different products and solutions, to be able to provide that single pane of glass perspective for those operators, whether we're talking about shrink, whether we're talking about safety, whether we're talking about marketing analytics, customer insights, etc. Things are moving too quickly to have disparate bespoke solutions. So I think the fact that the folks on the webinar here are feeling that same way, I don't disagree, because ultimately that unified physical security system is a conglomeration of all of the things that we're talking about here. And, you know, again, back in my DSW or my Target or my Nordstrom days, sensor tag is not going to stop anybody anymore. It's an essential tool, but I think it's a much more strategic approach that retailers have to take to be able to protect their bottom line at the end of the day.
Alex, any thoughts on this?
Jordan stated it nicely, right? But if I look at every single one of these as the tactical needs of all the functions that are represented in our audience today, the challenge is, how do all these tactical needs turn into the strategy overall, right, for loss prevention and asset protection? I mean, we have to come together. I mean, I'm your oddball out here, right? The merchandising planning and assessments guy from retail, right? That's having this dialogue. And just like Andy pointed out earlier, right? How do we blend it all together, right? So the key word for me is the word unified, right? And the second thing that I look at across all of them is, how do we rank and stack what makes sense for what we've now are realizing is possible, right? Because as Jordan said earlier, it exceeded some of our expectations. That could have caught us unprepared. As I look at the two questions that are coming in, right? OpEx, CapEx budgets, or how do you bridge the gap of like what I'm telling you I want versus what I really want? That dialogue that's starting, I mean, there's no one silver bullet, but that dialogue that's starting is going to let us rank and stack and basically decide across this.
Andy, I'll finish with you. Any thoughts here to share with the audience?
You know, I'm really encouraged actually by these results, because AI, as you know, and computer vision are kind of intertwined. So I'm actually giving myself 33% versus I'm combining those two. But you know, I talk to retailers almost every day, and a lot of them aren't, you know, they're not that aware of all of these AI use cases. And when I do a presentation and show like 10 different use cases, they're like, wow, AI can do that. I didn't even know that. So we're still at the beginning of using AI for loss prevention, asset protection. I feel like we're kind of pioneers in the industry, but I think if we do that survey in a few more years, the results would be a lot different.
Yeah, and I'll close on this. I think one of the things we're seeing is buying behavior changing. Loss prevention and asset protection have been really relying upon a CapEx model for many years. And this focus on new technologies, emerging technologies, is really forcing a buying behavior to look more like their IT departments, who have been buying as an OpEx for many years. And it allows that technology refresh to happen more quickly. And it doesn't hamstring old technology to be part of the conversation as we're trying to emerge the new technology. So I'm encouraged by that as well, and I'll move us on now. So I think on the next thing, we had another polling question we were going to put out there, because I think it's really interesting to hear the audience perspective, because I think it allows us to draw out what's next. Where have they tried to deploy technologies to address the shrink loss prevention, and where has it had less than desirable outcomes? So has it been at the front of the store, the parking lots, the fresh foods or perishables, back of house, or safety related technologies like spill detection and other use cases? So we'll let the poll go here for a couple half minute and see what it comes up for with our audience. Want to thank you all for participating as well. And I don't have a surprise here again, because I think this is really what we're seeing in the marketplace. We'll go in the opposite order. Andy, why don't you lead in on this? Because I think you've got some perspective as well.
Yeah, I'm excited to see that people are trying technology in so many areas because they usually start in the front of the store and then they slowly realize that there's an ROI and it's kind of a creep. But yeah, this is very encouraging. I think we'll see safety going up much higher in the future, not just for spill detection, but even things like known felon detection. I know a lot of stores are experimenting with that, and customers like myself are starting to feel like I'd rather give up my privacy and be safe in that shopping environment. So it's an encouraging poll.
Yeah, I agree. Alex, this one kind of speaks to your technology really nicely, so I'll let you jump in.
I tried really carefully to take a screenshot here to send to our head of product management because this confirms, right, the product. No surprise, it confirms the product management, but it also confirms the collaborations that we're looking for, right, kind of along this line. And it also shows you where the money is, right? You start from things that have to do with theft and loss, you move into things that have to do with waste and safety, right? And one learns from the other. And that's what I'm excited about, you know, communicating to folks today, right? That there is a way to lift and shift learnings from one to the other without starting from scratch all over again. So excited, and screenshot on its way to our head of product.
And Jordan, I'll close with you because your technology obviously is in every one of these areas. So why don't you give us some perspective there?
Yeah, I mean, I think getting into the root of the question, I think it's great to see that people are trying technology and trying to solve some of the problems that they have. I think when you go to the last two words of less than desirable outcomes, or last four words, I should say, I think it goes back to what you mentioned at the beginning, Mike, which is, do you have those expectations? Are you getting what you asked for? Or are you getting what you want? Do you just want a people count? Do you want to do customer segmentation? Or do you want to stop, shrink at the front end of the store? So I think as a technology manufacturer now, as part of this ecosystem and a former practitioner, having clear expectations from the get-go is, to me, one of the most important things that anybody can do. And also from the sales and manufacturing side is also operating with great transparency. We're not offering, perfection. We're improving efficiencies. We're creating a safer store environment. We're not saying we're going to solve every one of the world's problems. And if we did, I wouldn't be on this panel. I'd probably be on a beach somewhere sipping a Mai Tai. So I think at the end of the day, have those clear expectations and continue to try new things. My old CEO at DSW used to talk about the concept of, if you're going to fail, fail fast. So I think it's okay to have less than desirable outcomes as long as there's improvement along the way and you're willing to test and learn. And that's how retail has evolved and will continue to evolve, until the end of time.
Yeah, I think it also speaks clearly to the front end transformation that seems to be happening in most retail establishments. How do we make it frictionless? How do we make it more inviting for the client? And how do we move people through the store more quickly so we avoid those queue lines? And we make it a pleasant experience to visit the store. How do we make that an experience again? Because customers are now shopping differently than they used to prior to the epidemic. They're coming in, they're purchasing, they're leaving if they go to the store now, because there's a big logistics opportunity there to bring stuff straight to the front door of the customer. So retail is competing on many levels, and we're happy to be part of that solutioning that goes on with that evolving tech. So integration, there's a lot going on, and when you look at how things are brought to market and how those use cases are proven, there's a lot of things going on. And you put together what we call the integration journey. What have you each seen as some of the common pitfalls in integration? And then the second part of that question will be some real life examples that you could draw from your background currently, or I'll even open it up to any of your past employment opportunities as well, because I think there's relevant experiences there. So I'll let you guys decide who wants to go first on this one. Alex, you're shaking your head. It looks like it's you.
Oh, man. Okay. I was shaking my head on like thinking through this question. Um,
When you think about when you're onboarding a new client, what, you go through that whole journey. And you see a lot of people trying to leverage what they currently have and trying to integrate it into what needs to be there. And, we see some things like that. I think you could probably springboard from there.
no, absolutely. Absolutely. Operationalizing AI is effectively how I would label what you just kind of described, right? What keeps me up at night is the fact that I heard from Gartner, right, that it takes about 8 months to get any AI based initiative integrated into a business workflow and deliver that tangible value, right, to the previous question that we had. And what that highlights to me and what I'm reminded of in a lot of our situations is that sometimes for the majority of the organizations, right, to be able to continuously deliver and integrate an AI solution within an existing enterprise application and workflow is an afterthought. As sad as that might sound, it's an afterthought, right? So we get bruised, we stop, and then we just kind of go back, right? And I think that when you look at how do we reduce these pain points and these failures, and I'll use the word that you used before, right? Is the problem frictionless or is the problem less friction? If we actually start with less friction, right? Baby steps, and you learn and you build it up, reusable assets, Lego pieces, as we kind of call it within Everseen, you're basically able to improve not only your technical AI architecture, but also the problem structure, around what you're, trying to do. And at the end of the day, you'll have a rapid and mature way to orchestrate around these things, right? And if you do it right, the output is reusable and extendable somewhere else down the line. So I'll start with that and pass the floor. Since you picked, I'll pass it on to Andy now next.
Okay, thank you, Alex. So when you look at us, the panelists here, we represent, the server, the camera, the secret sauce, which is the software that enables the AI. But at any time you're deploying computer vision, the cameras have to talk to the servers, has to talk to the POS, right? And so that integration is absolutely critical. And so it's best to work with folks that get along like we do, know each other, and have worked well together in the past. But let me give you some tips from my perspective, which is your edge AI server. What you don't want to do is a rack server. A rack server is like really big, huge, right? That's the olden days. Now we have what's called an edge AI server. And here's the ticket. You want to future-proof. Remember on the last slide when we did the poll, you saw all those areas that people are trying technology. You're going to want to do that too. Trust me. I have the largest QSR chain in the world. They have one AI use case and now they're working on 7 more. So what I can't do is sell them 7 more servers. Might be nice, but nobody wants 7 servers on top of each other in a tiny little office, right? So what you want to do is make sure you're thinking for the future and saying to yourself, I'm going to want to do back of the house, front of the house, and parking lot. So I should get a server that can put multiple use cases inside the same server, right? And Lenovo has one that's literally like a little bit bigger than a laptop and hangs on the wall like a picture. So that's my first tip for you is make sure that you're not using old server technology. Second of all, watch out for security because we have people that try to like charge their phones in the servers and steal the servers and do all kinds of stuff like that. Make sure that you're asking the right questions up front to prevent any theft of your data. Because Lenovo servers, the minute they're unplugged or anything enters them, boom, they shut down and everything's automatically saved. And the future is also nobody's going to be stacking those multiple servers. Instead, they're going to have a convergence of technology, we call it convergence. So all that stuff in that room is going to kind of go into one server, just like we talked about before with your security system, one platform. Same thing you want to do with all of your AI use cases, get them into one platform. So that would be some of the pitfalls I see. Sometimes I go into the back of a store and I'm like, hey, let me see your tech stack. And it's literally from floor to ceiling when it could have been the size of a laptop. So just reach out to any of us and we can help you with those challenges.
And Jordan?
So I'm going to take my manufacturer's hat off and put on my LP AP hat. I think there's one word that I would avoid like the plague. It's also a P word if I'm looking at why things fail, and it's proprietary. I think as a retailer, having choices and the ability to either use or reuse a sensor, a piece of an IoT device, and repurpose that into other applications, and not be confined to only being able to work with one party or one provider, to me is a fundamental part of how things can either go very well or fail very quickly from an integration perspective. So I think, looking for solutions that are unique and proprietary are two different things. There's something that Everseen does that is unique, that's patented and is very strong and powerful in terms of their technology. Then there's cameras out there that could only work with a specific solution. That's somewhere where you really don't want to put yourself. Number one, I think the supply chain crisis over the last several years has told us that we need options as a consumer and as a retail operator. But number two, you're future-proofing yourself from being able to use that technology for other purposes, other use cases, and turn that device into a revenue-generating part of your business, which is not typical for an AP or LP type of operation. And then the other thing I'll just say to look at the human element, Mike, is, communication and collaboration. I think to be successful, you have to communicate and have clear expectations of what you as a retailer and what your solution provider or partners are able to do, and then be able to play in a sandbox nicely with others internally, with your own stakeholders within your organization. And then, like Alex and Andy and I are sitting on a call today, how do we help deliver seamless end-to-end solutions for our customers that will help us not just grow our revenue, but help them solve their problems and grow theirs as well.
Mike, can I take the floor back just for 20 seconds? There was a
Yep.
reason why I wanted to go last after what both said.
Okay.
One of the things that we didn't share, right, as the trio on the phone on the panel today, is we are working amongst ourselves to figure out what we've, casually called the t-shirt sizing. There's a question in there about how do you deal, and these solutions become more realistic for smaller retailers, right? This is not just because of the big giants and the use cases that you're all hearing that are out there, right? There's a lot that basically fall into that tier next, right? That smaller set of retailer, more regional. And we have put it upon ourselves, right? The folks on the panel are a great example to work out this t-shirt sizing, what makes sense, so we can answer the question, what is a demonstrated best practice? Other people like you, here's what they do. If we were in your shoes, you have two options. We prefer, hey, these are the reasons why. So that's been an effort as well that I think I like to shout out across the table here of what we've done.
I couldn't agree more, Alex. We've had customers that have come to us asking a very clear business objective. Here's what we'd like to do. And they've said, what can we do to solve this problem? And one of the examples was automating unattended delivery. How do we protect the store, protect the driver, and allow that payroll savings that occurs through that automation? And there's pieces of all of our technologies that went into that. And we knew we were going to solve the one objective, but what we found was we also started solving other objectives once we started evaluating the data. And for instance, now that we automated a door, we automated some other doors within those environments, and we started seeing clear energy consumption changes that were taking place from store to store, and we're able to automate an efficiency there to save the customer money on energy. And that's a big deal now, considering the cost of energy these days. So, a lot of times, I guess my point is, a lot of times you have one objective, and the collaboration between a team like we have here today solves others that we didn't even anticipate. And that's the power of partnership. So I just wanted to bring that to the panel.
Hey, Mike, before we get into this, there's a question that's kind of relevant to what Andy had mentioned that just came up in the Q&A. So Steve Pollock asked, what's the best way to make sure your technology is working properly? He gave an example. I don't check my cameras every day to make sure that they're working. Believe it or not, there's AI for that. There is AI that is purpose-built to not just check if your cameras are plugged in and that there's a network connection, but that the field of view is the field of view that you spec'd in when Telaid installed that camera. So Steve, there's solutions out there. Out of fairness to the providers that I'm aware of, I won't mention their names on this, but definitely try to get a hold of Andy, Mike, or myself, or Alex, and we can point you in the right direction of who those providers are. But AI plays a big role in making sure that not just your cameras, but any other type of IoT device is functioning, doing what it should be doing, making sure it's, you know, phoning home back to corporate or whatever it needs to do. That's no different for cameras. So there's definitely some options for you out there.
Yeah, well said, Jordan. And I think we can move on to the next point here. So another audience involvement. What's the biggest pain point when you have identified a technology and are moving from test to pilot to rollout? And there's a lot of best practices that go into that. And the panel here is very well equipped to help with those steps. So hopefully we'll get some audience involvement here again. Have we got enough sample map? Looks like we do. I'll let this one, I'll let you guys decide who jumps in here first.
Well, you think about what a lot of retailers have in terms of their legacy devices, whether we're talking about a camera or any type of additional sensor. Again, I think there's a misconception out there that AI needs the highest resolution to operate. Sometimes it's more about field of view than it is about resolution. Sometimes low resolution, even sometimes analog encoded cameras can work. Now, that's not every case. Going back to the last poll of what makes something fail or creates, you know, poor results. But I think asking the right questions and having good inventory of what you have in your store or your distribution centers in terms of what those assets are, what they can provide, a solution like Everseen or like Andy's you know, Edge AI servers. Depending on the use case, you may be able to actually leverage a lot of that infrastructure without having to come out of the pocketbook and rip and replace all of your technology. Alex, what do you think there?
I agree with you wholeheartedly. And if you don't, I have nothing to add in your first one, but I'll jump on the second largest one in the poll, which is ROI, and tie it back to that anonymous question that we got, right? That is a classic moment. That is a classic moment of a bespoke solution or use case, right? That we all got excited about. You put all the technology into play, but then you're not necessarily seeing the ROI that you thought, right? When you think about, you know, shoplifter, right? We talk about the topology of shoplifter with LPF, LPRC, right? We're analyzing this, you know, this red actor, right? One of the things that we learned in the self-checkout alongside a lot of our, you know, key set of customers was, you know, we're unpredictable as human beings. It's all about patterns and sequences, behavior, this unstructured data that we brought through from the camera, the first time that I could actually see the event, right? And not only that, as it was unfolding, decide if I actually intervene or do I nudge the person to kind of self-correct, right? The one question that we got that effectively defined our roadmap was, can you guys rewind and see what the person that now is stealing at the self-checkout was doing through the entire path through the store, right? And when you hear that, you know, honest, like I go back, like, can we like track that back? The answer is you can't, right? Because none of our systems were integrated that way. But what we learned about the way somebody moves and acts at the self-checkout is exactly how we informed what does concealment look like, right? And deciding, is it better for you to actually stop somebody that's doing a sweeping moment in the aisle versus stopping them at the front door, right? Because you can cause, you know, harm and physical, you know, harm to others that are coming in at that point, right? Because somebody's going to panic, flee their hands, grab stuff, run out, try to make a run for it, right? And at that point, you've all seen the Tide, you know, YouTube videos, right? And all that kind of stuff that's happening. So I think on the ROI front, right, the idea of like truly figuring out, is the effort worth the squeeze? That's when we bring all these things back together and you ask yourself, where else have I put stuff that has worked? How can I leverage that and kind of start to put the puzzle together slowly but surely, right? And that North Star is, did I make the money to fuel the next initiative? Am I self-funding with the first one to basically earn the right to move to the next one? Andy, I'll pass it to you because I think you have comments on both of the top two that came out.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. I mean, I have a huge national retailer that actually is able to self-fund within 3 months. So these do pay for themselves, but you don't really realize it until you try it. So I would just encourage you to definitely try. Let's see, incompatibility with legacy devices. Gosh, I hear that all the time. I mean, even our own phones, right? We like to trade those every 3 years or even less. So you can imagine an edge AI server, that technology is very rapidly changing. Like every year we have a new version of it. So what I'm going to highly suggest all of you is to consider an OpEx model for your edge AI hardware and actually the entire deployment, right? All the technology that goes into it, Telaid can offer that as just a single monthly payment. And then every 3 years, Lenovo will refresh that edge AI server for you with the latest technology. So that's one way you can get around the legacy devices, because everything has to talk to each other in AI or it's not going to work. So legacy is not our friend. Legal and compliance is I can speak from the point of, I have dozens of these POCs going on right now at different retailers. And where I always get a stumbling block is security. Security's like, whoa, don't touch my camera streams. Those are my camera streams. I'm not sharing. So I got to get past that one a lot. And then also, think about the Everseen software. Jordan's cameras and my servers do absolutely nothing. There's no AI without Everseen, right? So, that's valuable software. And so it's not an easy process for us to just put your software on my server, Alex. It's a legal agreement that's got to go through. And I've got, retailers that take 3 or 4 months to cross that hurdle to have an agreement with Everseen, for example. So that's where I see some of these pain points.
Yeah, and
Mike, sorry, there's an obvious one we all skipped, right? There was no responses on the one on the bottom. So I'll kick it off, and maybe I think Jordan is somewhere today that can even offer a topical kind of point of view, right? But this, it reminded me, one customer basically told me, Alex, one of the reasons I want self-checkout is because we have not come back full from COVID, and I'm unable to stay open an additional 2 hours like my competitor across the street. So if you're able to give me a self-checkout system with the appropriate, guiding guardrails around shrink, that will allow me to basically stay open another 2 hours, deal with effectively the payroll that I have, or the people that have basically showed up to work to stay open for additional 2 hours. That threw me halfway across the table, right? Never thought about it as that benefit, right? That a self-checkout system with the right shrink solution around it enables a store to stay open, right? So there is, again, this unintended consequence, right, of like helping us somewhere else is kind of interesting. Jordan, any thoughts on that payroll reduction, payroll reallocation?
Yeah.
0 votes.
Yeah, so as Alex mentioned, today I'm in New York City, and I was attending a presentation from a chief of police for a major university, and he was talking about technology, a lot of what we're talking about today, but he talked about how many folks look at technology as a way to replace people. And I think as a business that's operated with people, for people, and around people, we have to, from a semantics perspective, look at this is technology to complement and provide additional force multiplication efforts versus replace all of the associates within your store. How do you make the people that you have working for you today more efficient and more effective, focused on the right zones, the right areas, deter crime from areas that you are now aware of because it's been illuminated by AI or by cameras or whatnot. So I think we all have to think about that as this is not to replace a person. This is to help enable that person to do something better than they can do themselves, by themselves. So I think, it's very top of mind for me as I just heard it from the chief today, and it resonated with me, which is why I brought it up pre-call.
thanks, Jordan. I think, we talked about this earlier, the rethinking how buying takes place, going from that CapEx to that OpEx model, how that allows greater freedom in the future decisions because you're not limited by your past decisions. And I think, it allows the collaboration to take place much more quickly. So I'll move us on to the next. We're obviously always looking to the future. We want to be able to help retail service the client better. If the pandemic taught us anything, we had to reimagine how we were delivering goods to the consumer, and that was through automation, that was through technology, and we've touched on a number of those. But what do you think is going to be the biggest shift coming in tech for loss prevention and AP in the next 2 to 3 years? I'll open that up. Andy?
Okay, I can start on that one. Voice. Voice is really going to be an enabler, believe it or not. We talked about computer vision, but in order to have accessibility, voice AI is absolutely critical. You think about it, not everybody can afford to put fingers on a keyboard or thumbs on glass, right? But everybody has a voice, and we may not all speak the same language, but this is going to give accessibility to your operations. So when you incorporate voice AI into some of these use cases and allow people to order with their voice, or if it's in the back room, you could hire people who don't speak English, but they could still understand how to do procedures and so forth. That's going to open up your workforce and open up your customer base. So that's one area. Then I also want you to think about sound. So ask yourself, what are some sounds I never want to hear when I'm in my retail environment? I'm sure you never want to hear a gunshot. You don't want to hear glass breaking. You don't want to hear anybody screaming. These are sounds that, although they vary on, threatening level, you don't want any of them. And so if the glass is breaking, you would want the manager to be alerted for a spill cleanup. If there's a gunshot, you immediately want authorities to be notified. So I want you to also, think about incorporating sound technology for the future, auditory AI, we call it. Another big shift I think we're going to see is the shift from, oh my gosh, I don't want anybody, to invade my privacy, to go right ahead as long as I'm safe, right? I would prefer to shop at a store where I know there was known felon detection. And the shoplifters are identified as they walk in the store. It makes me feel safer. So I think you're going to see a big shift in that direction. I also think you're going to see what I talked about earlier, that we're going to get rid of all those racks in the back rooms or in the office manager's space with tons of servers and things on them. And you're going to go to one device with, say, 14 AI use cases inside that same device, powering it all. And then last of all is what Mike just touched on, is everybody's asking me now for to do it as a service, right? The entire technology operation. That's what I love about working with Telaid, is they can offer that, it's my server and the Hanwha technology with the Everseen technology, and it's all wrapped up, right? And it's a monthly lease payment, especially if you don't own all of your operations, and some of them, you have to present this technology and say, do you want to buy it versus you have to buy it? It makes it a little more palatable when it's a monthly payment, a much lower payment, and then they know they're going to refresh the technology in 3 years. And it's also a sustainability play because we recycle that for you. So there's some of my trends that I see in the landscape.
Thanks, Andy. Alex, look for your perspective here.
There's not much to add to what Andy said, but I'll add 2 watchouts. Okay, is what I would say is in front of us in the next 2 to 3 years, and I'll use the 2 F's that Jordan put before, and I'll add a third one, which is kind of the mantra that I introduced into Everseen. Right, it's not only fail fast, it's fail fast forward. Right, it's my 3 F's that I basically said. Right, is you have to learn, and we have to kind of learn quick. My watch out in the fail fast forward is, if we put so much emphasis on technology and we're at technology in, customer out, we might get too excited about what the tech could do and actually miss out on what we're trying to basically do in retail, which involves 3 important key cast of characters, right? And that is the shopper, the one that ultimately swings the doors, the associate, for all intents and purposes, the one that is actually making it happen, and even the vendor community, right, that's trying to figure out how that all kind of connects, right? So we need to understand the X for all 3 of these different, cast of characters in the story. My second watch out was actually reminded to me the other day by a colleague of mine, right? It's all about the interface between chair and keyboard, is what he said, right? So it's the whole idea of human centric. So all the stuff that Andy's talking about, right? If we don't put the human in the center, if we don't go back and think about, right, that office chair with that keyboard, right, what makes it work is what the human is doing, right? And like Jordan said earlier, look for the things that I'm going to remove, the repeat mundane tasks that AI can take care of, right? Open me up to a universe that I'm able to actually augment my skill set as an individual or basically as an experience. So as an associate, being able to do other things in other parts of the world, other parts of the store, and, you know, from clienteling, from just basically smiling and being happy, right, from what I've done because of my productiveness. And then the whole thing basically kind of ties beautifully together, right? Bringing back old retail with advanced technology, right? The old essence of the mom and pop shop that I grew up in on the other side of the world, right? As a son of a merchant. And that's kind of the beauty, I think, of what's in front, figuring out how to blend those two things together. Jordan, I'll pass it to you.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think between you, Alex, and Andy, you covered a lot of it. And the only thing I would say is, I think from a computer vision perspective, I'm super bullish on where retail is going. And I think the landscape today versus even a year ago or 2 years ago or 4 years ago, you know, when I left DSW to come here, it's tremendous. And I think the appetite and the willingness for this community to try new things to help solve their problems and be smarter about their business is tremendous. So I see, from my lens, I see it every day because I'm hearing about people doing POCs and asking great questions. So I'm super encouraged by what the retail community is looking at today. And I would encourage you, if you're an AP and you're not talking to your innovation team, or whatever buzzword your company uses for innovation team, I've heard it be called a lot of different things. You're leaving money on the table, because while you're doing what you're doing, they're actually doing what you're doing as well. And you guys got to put your heads together to work as a team and collaborate. And I see that more often than not. So make sure you're reaching out to those folks, whatever you guys call it. Andy, you're shaking your head. You probably agree and run into that as much as I do.
Yeah, I mean, and you guys can look like thought leaders, right? So typically it starts with you, the AI use cases. But what if you were to then reach out to your innovation team, and I could come in with Jordan and Alex, and we could do a Lenovo AI innovation showcase. And I could show you like 8 different use cases that you could do all over the store. And then you can also share the cost, right? Then it's not just loss prevention, paying for the server and the cameras and so forth to implement the use cases. Everybody would share that because it's benefiting multiple departments.
Yeah, we've also seen other titles coming out of the woodwork during the last couple of years as retail has transformed its square footage from front of house to omni-channel to back of house to warehouse. And you see terms like data scientists showing up, where you really have a whole department that's there to understand how to most efficiently use the square footage that's being allocated to service the consumer. And our job right now is to help everyone in the audience better service the consumer, because without the consumer, none of us have a job at that point, because we would be without the people that are paying the bills. So as we look forward, LP and AP are going to probably be buying more like the IT departments. And the team here at Telaid would like to, be involved in that conversation, because I think that the experience that we have with this panel here would help, avoid some of those things and hit the 3 Fs that Alex discussed. So I'll turn it over to you, Matt.
Yeah, we have some questions coming in, Mike. Great conversation. Love the wrap up on that, Jordan. And one thing, just from my 20 years of experience in loss prevention, and something that I would encourage folks to do, is make sure that you're tied with your procurement team, right? Because they're getting requests from every stakeholder in your organization on what they're trying to solve for. And it's not just the innovations team. If you're tied to innovations and procurement, and they're showcasing, or they're basically reporting out on what solutions they're looking to source, then as a business partner, you can go engage those stakeholders before an agreement is made, and make sure that you are addressing those things and bringing in your providers and your solution provider partners that can help build out. Let's not just go after this one thing when we can go after all of this holistically for the business. So Great conversation. We only have time for a handful of questions. So Mike, for the first question, for large retailers with large budgets, some of these scalable system-wide integrations may be possible, but when it's a small retailer, how do you avoid single device deployment and future-proof for that technology moving forward?
I'll open that up to the panel, and then maybe I'll bring the perspective of the integrator, because I think we've got some single device options to discuss here. Jordan, do you have an idea where you would take that question?
I'd almost have Andy start with that question, because I think, to me, I see us as the eyes.
Right.
Alex is the brains, and you need something to help those brains operate effectively, and that's the server. It doesn't matter how big or small your organization is. The problems that you're facing are unique to you, and I think there's scalable technology on both sides, both on the enterprise size and smaller. I think often as a manufacturer, we always focus on the biggest, and we sometimes, not purposely, but ignore the smaller mom and pop or chain stores. But if a solution works for a big box store, it can be scaled down to be deployed at a smaller scale, probably even quicker, because you don't have all of the barriers that large organizations have. So I don't see that as a barrier to entry. I think, again, having a plan, understanding what you're trying to deploy, and then working with those key stakeholders in your organization, regardless of size, I think you could be successful.
I have multiple convenience store type deployments and small retail environments, and our servers, believe it or not, start, literally almost like the size of a pack of cards, right? And then they go to maybe the size of a box of cake mix. And then they go up to the 450, which is really, like I said, not too much larger than your laptop. So just make sure you're buying the right technology. I've come in before and they bought workstations with gaming cards in them, and it's actually a fire hazard. So you just got to make sure you're getting good advice from your integrator.
Absolutely. And I think you guys hit the nail on the head earlier when you talked about OpEx versus CapEx and how you're looking to spend your money. Really opens a lot of doors for smaller retailers that might not have the significant budgets that major retailers across the world may have. So great job summarizing that for the team on the call today. Next question, how are retailers leveraging AI to help employees feel safe as we enter the holiday season, in lieu of what we've seen in the past few years with smash and grabs and the escalation of violence?
Andy, you want to start?
Well, I can speak from both AI and personal perspective. I love seeing the cameras everywhere, right? And that makes me feel safer. So more cameras are better. But computer vision really is, there's so many use cases now. We even have, the ones where they stop the wheels of the cart when a gang comes in and takes the high value products. We have in parking lots, all kinds, when a group comes in together, authorities can be alerted, those type of things. Those are some of the use cases that come to my mind. But the most important part is to get the cameras in, and then we can work with all the different, I could do a showcase just on safety. If whoever asked that question is interested, I could bring in 5 or 6 ISVs that only do use cases that address retail safety.
Excellent.
Thanks, Andy.
All right, so we do need to move forward as we're running out of time. We do have a couple of announcements. First and foremost, Telaid has sponsored a 20% discount off of LPF memberships and our certification courses. If you are interested in that, we will include the promo code in the post-webinar email you'll receive tomorrow. So be on the lookout for that, as that will be valid through the end of October. And we will be awarding 5 random attendees an LP certification course scholarship courtesy of Telaid. So again, be on the lookout for that email tomorrow. Thank you all for joining us today for our LPF webinar. We look forward to having you on future broadcasts. Stay safe and have a great week. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.